Well, welcome to a different episode today of Dashing Down to Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loan to deal with anyone in Australia, and they've got over 25 lenders on their panel. Thought we'd do a halfway report of the Olympic Games. We're halfway there now. The swimming is over. Australia performing pretty well. There's been some magnificent performances from Australians and international athletes as well. And I thought I'd get the man on that started all these podcasts, and he's been very popular indeed on all the various social media platforms. Talking of one of the great broadcasters of all time, Glenn Mitchell. Glenn, welcome back to the program. Good to have you with us.
How are you, Dan? Sleep deprived like I am, I suppose?
I am absolutely sleep deprived, but loving every single minute of it. You enjoying all the games so far?
Loving it. Absolutely loving it. I think that we go back to London in 2012. I think Paris is blessed with the fact that they have so many great historic and iconic monuments and the likes around the city. I mean, the cross-country part of the equestrian around Versailles was outstanding. The road race last night, the marathons. When you've got the beach volleyball with the Eiffel Tower as a backdrop, it's pretty hard to top. So I think they're very, very blessed. I hope Brisbane can build an Eiffel Tower and something else in the next 8 years so it looks equally as good in 2032.
And the same with LA. Mind you, LA have got all the stadiums, haven't they, from 1984. So it won't really be much of a rebuild there for them, will it?
No, it won't. I think that's one of the main things, Dan, we spoke about in the podcast earlier that I did with you, is that the cost of Olympic Games nowadays, they were very lucky, Paris, that they were able to utilise, in particular, outdoor venues that telegenically on television just come up remarkably well. So for Brisbane, and for other cities that lay beyond that into the future, it's going to be a real issue in regard to the costs and building or renovating structures that you either don't have or ones that need repair.
It's been a Women's Olympics for Australia so far. Is there one particular performance from our ladies that stands out for you at the moment?
I think Saya Sakakibara's performance was incredible, truly incredible. I think the great thing about any Olympic event, or I think any event in sport really, is often the backstory. And the backstory to her performance, you think of, going back several years, for her brother to be, well, there's no way around it. He's been left with ongoing brain damage as a result of a horrific accident in Bathurst. She took up the sport because of him. She was put in the back of an ambulance and carried off the Tokyo course on a stretcher when she knocked herself unconscious. So everything that family has been through, for them to be there and to see the reaction from her brother in the grandstand, for mine, that's an outstanding story. And I'm sure, like a lot of great Olympic events, that will have resonated beyond the borders of Australia. A lot of people will have heard and read about the trials and tribulations of that family. And I just think it was an outstanding result.
I mean, you think about what she did. She didn't just win, Glenn. She blew them away. I mean, how strong she was mentally to be able to get the race done and put what had happened behind her. There was a terrific documentary on Channel 9 in the lead up to the Olympic Games. And obviously there was still some residual damage mentally about her preparation. But, how good was she? I mean, it was the perfect race, perfect performance in all the lead up races as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really big advantage in that particular sport, because it actually allows you to sit in the right spot at the starting gate. And she was always starting. As she was looking down the right-hand side of the course, and the first corner after the first couple of jumps was a right-hander. So it allows her to get to that apex and get to that point quicker. So, yeah, that was a massive advantage. Her winning through the heats and then winning each of those semi-final races, all three of them, allowed her to be, if you like, in the best seating position going into the final. But yeah, a terrific event. And I think, I know that we're halfway through the games, a little bit over halfway now. I'm not too sure that we'll see anything as a motive from Australia as that particular win.
Glenn Mitchell, esteemed broadcaster, is with me. We're reviewing the first week or so of the Olympic Games in Paris. Still some big events to come. We're here for Aussie Home Loans, and their areas of expertise include first home buyers, equipment loans, car loans, and personal loans. What about the great, incomparable, as I'll call her now, Jess Fox? How good was she, Glenn?
Incredible. And she finally got that monkey off her back, if you like, in regard to the K1. It was the one that she has been the most prolific at around the world, whether it be world championships or world cups. And we know that she fell short with that one minor error in Tokyo. She won the C1 there, which, was always a prospect for her, but most people thought it was going to be the K1 with which she'd win her first Olympic gold medal. But to do the double once again, or not once again, to do the double for the first time, and now she's got the kayak slalom event as well, but an outstanding athlete. I watched that event, and the ability of mind and body and everything to be able to get through. I mean, it's only a short run. You're only talking about 100 seconds or thereabouts for both events, but the mental stress and the physical stress of fighting against that white water, in particular when you've got to go towards the upstream gates. She's an incredible athlete. There's no doubt about that. And, in some ways, I mean, she'd be 38 years of age, so she's not going to get to Brisbane, which is a real shame, because I think that she would be one of the most beloved athletes you'd ever have on a home Olympic soil. She'd be a little bit like a Kathy Freeman. But unfortunately, her birth certificate will be against her. She may well go on to LA, but I can't see her getting to Brisbane. But outstanding performance from an outstanding athlete.
Imagine how she's going to go with all the various companies coming at her. She's already got a few on board. I think she's going to do very, very well, isn't she, over the next year or so?
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Probably not as well, though, as Leon Marchand from France.
No.
Talk about having the world as your oyster. I mean, France is sitting third on the gold medal tally at the swimming, and he's won all four of them. Yes. There's a bloke that could probably write his own check. And I don't know if he actually lives in Paris or where he lives in France, but if he lives in Paris, I don't reckon he'll have to buy another meal at a restaurant for the rest of his life. As soon as he walks in the front door, he'll be given the best table and just given the menu and the premium wine list. He's been outstanding. But no, you're right, Jess Fox, I think will capitalise, and rightly so, because if you look at it, we've got LeBron James, we've got Djokovic and Alcaraz in tennis. We've got so many people that are at these Olympic Games that are multi-millionaires. And there are a lot of others that ply their trade. A lot of our swimmers, for example, they're never going to retire rich. Bit different if you're right at the pointy end and you're an Ariane Titmus or a Molly O'Callaghan or Emma McKeon. But yeah, for Jess Fox, and what you'd have to say without being disrespectful, to most people is an obscure sport. When you're talking about slalom whitewater events, she deserves every accolade and every financial reward that comes her way. No doubt about that whatsoever.
She had a slightly disappointing semi-final, and at one stage I was watching it with my brother Glenn. I thought, gee, she might even miss out here, but she got through. And then no doubt the weight where you're sitting obviously in the gold medal chair, and it was just agonising watching it. I was just thinking, for her and her family, Father Richard, who called the race so professionally with Dave Colbert, I mean, it was unbelievable to just sit there and just watch the others, unfortunately for them, fall like dominoes, and just got the job done.
Yeah, we think back to London in 2012 and Sally Pearson, I mean, having to wait for what was a very brief period of time. I'm sure in her mind it felt like the clock was standing still to decide the finish in that 100-metre hurdles. But yeah, you multiply that 10, 12, 15, 20-fold in regard to Jess Fox, where you were just sitting there. We do see it, and we saw Grace Brown win the women's time trial on the road, Australia's first Olympic gold medal. Same sort of thing there. It's that tradition in time trial cycling that the fastest rider sits in that prime position, and every time someone comes in and knocks them off, they go and sit on that throne. And you continue there waiting and hoping that you'll be the last person sitting there, which for Jess Fox, she had 6 competitors coming down the course after her. But it must be incredibly nerve-wracking. I mean, you don't wish ill upon anybody. And I'm sure, Jess Fox, by nature of how long she's been on the circuit, she'd know all those women, and some of them would be close friends to hers. Yep. So you'd have that mixed sort of emotion. But boy, oh boy, it must be a nervous 20, 25 minutes just sitting there waiting.
One of the greatest broadcasters of all time, Glenn Mitchell, who went to 4 Olympic Games and called some of the great cycling events. The track cycling is, of course, one of the big events about to get underway. He's here with us for Aussie Home Loans for Dashing Down to Olympic Adventures, looking at the first half of the Olympic Games. Glenn, to the pool now, and Kaylee McEwen, all-time great now, back to back with the 100, 200-metre backstroke, I should say. Sensational performance.
Well, it is. I mean, she's the first woman to ever do it. And when you think of the great Christina Egazeki, who going back, into the 1990s, actually leveled Dawn Fraser. She became the second woman to win the same event, the 100-metre backstroke, at 3 consecutive Olympics. Since then, we saw Katie Ledecky win the 800 4 times last night. But, you think of how great Egazeki was. She won 3 100-metre backstrokes, and once she won the double, the 100 and 200 in one Olympics. So for Kaylee to be able to do that in consecutive Olympic Games is an enormous achievement. And one of the great things now about Australian swimming, now I know automatically there is the fallback argument, or not an argument, it's just a fact that if you're in a sport like swimming, you get more opportunities than other athletes. Kathy Freeman, ended up winning 1 gold and 1 silver. But if you look at it now, Emma McKeon sits alone at the top with 6 Olympic gold medals for Australia. And then you've got O'Callaghan and McEwen with 5. You've got Titmus with 4. All of a sudden now, and you look at Molly O'Callaghan, she's only 20 years of age. So she's 1 gold medal behind the Australian record. And depending on what happens in Australia's probably last true gold medal prospect in the pool, the 4x100 metre medley final tonight, she could actually draw level as a 20-year-old with 6 Olympic gold medals. So the quality of this women's team at the moment is quite outstanding. And I do wonder too, Dan, about what sort of advantage Australian women have over so many other nations in the world in regard to the way that we take funding so equitably in Australia. Yep. If you look at so many other countries around the world, depending on politics and certainly depending on religion in a lot of countries, that Australian women do get a really terrific advantage, that in Australia, we do fund our men and women pretty much 50-50. So if you're looking at the men, for example, the men are going up against well-funded competitors from every nation in the world. The women do have an advantage, and I wonder how much that advantage will continue to grow for Australian women. They're competing against Americans and British and French, who are all in a similar funding system or funding scheme. But there are a large part of the world where women athletes do not get anywhere near the same amount of funding and support that their male counterparts do. And this isn't just swimming, this is across the board. So I think when you tally together Australia's outstanding athletes, female athletes, and then you throw in the fact that they are getting a massive government and corporate support. And in some countries, Dan, there would be a lot of female athletes that aren't actually even cheered for by their own population, the male population. So it doesn't surprise me to see that we're doing so well. I mean, at one stage, the first 8 medals that Australia won, eight gold medals, were all won by women. So we have a preeminent women's competition. We won more gold medals in history. More women have won gold medals for Australia than any other, than the men have. And there wouldn't be too many countries around the world where that has actually happened.
Cam McAvoy, talking of men, was great in the 50-metre freestyle. He's got a great backstory as well, talking about Sire before in the BMX, and he was disappointed with how he swum 8 years ago. He was going to give the sport up, but he's come back. So that was an outstanding performance, the way he stormed home to win that as well, Glenn.
It was. I mean, that's a real redemption story. You talk about people, and you always say to your kids, don't give up. Keep trying. Your luck will change or whatever. I mean, 4th Olympic Games, he'd previously won 3 bronze medals. As you said, so close to throwing it away. And that would have no doubt eaten in the back of his mind for the rest of his life. But he retires now as an Olympic gold medalist, and hats off to him. A terrific performance, and again, a really well-rounded Australian. We have so many in our team that are great personalities. He's a very smart man away from the pool. Jessica Fox, I think, got a 99 ATAR or something like that. I mean, we've got some very well-rounded athletes performing. But no, Cam McAvoy, big tick. Massive congratulations to a man that showed so much persistence.
We've got a lot of rowers who are doctors or lawyers or work in the finance game. And talking of the rowing, an underwhelming campaign, just 1 medal. I mean, they're hard to win. And that, of course, was the women's pairs who won a gold as part of the women's fours. Annabelle McIntyre and Jess Morrison, they just got pipped for silver. The Dutch blew the rest of the field away in the pairs. Good effort by Rigney to get close in the sculls. She just got pipped as well in the closing stages in the women's single sculls. And they thought the 8 boats, Glenn, were going to be the ones that were going to do well for Australia, but it didn't work out. They put their best rowers there, and in the end, a very disappointing campaign for Australia.
Oh, there's going to be quite an autopsy done on this rowing. Well, not so much the team, I think the selection. I mean, they were the defending champions in the Coxless Four, which we have such a great heritage, whether it's awesome, foursome, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. They're the defending champions from Tokyo, and they only left Alex Hill in the boat. The stroke stayed in there. The other three were leveraged or levered over into the 8. I know that probably not so much in Australia because we have such a heritage with the four, going back to Seoul and then rolling through Barcelona and the likes in the men's Coxless Four. But in Europe in particular, the premier event is seen as being the 8s. And I guess in Australia, when you look at domestic rowing, the head of the river, if you like, or the 8s when you have a national championship is the one that does garner the most, kudos. And I think because Australia had never won an 8, they decided, well, we've got a pretty good base of rowers here. Let's try and put most of our eggs in one 8-person basket. As I said, they left Hill as the stroke in the reigning gold medalist, the 4s, and then had to find 3 other rowers for him. And unfortunately, what could likely have been another golden moment in that particular boat, the 4, I guess in hindsight, Dan, you'd say they threw it away and tried to develop an 8 when really they perhaps should have stayed with what was the winning formula.
Well, I mean, my attitude to that, Glenn, is if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. I mean, I think Rosie Popper had retired. I know her through my cousin's son. She was part of the 4s in the women's 4s that won gold in Tokyo, and obviously Lucy Stephen went into the 8 boat. They felt they needed her to strengthen the 8s, and they finished 4th out of 4 in the final. And we've spoken about Annabelle and Jess, and you're right about the men. I mean, if they've done the job before, let them have a crack at doing it again.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, the autopsy will run deep here, and I think it should. You get one chance every 4 years, and I think I'd be fascinated to read. I don't think anything will be published, but I'd be fascinated to read whatever the findings are or the recommendations are if they've done an investigation, because they certainly have to. And you've got to keep in mind, you've got to remember too, that sports funding in this country, rightly or wrongly, is tied in regard to your medal performances. And that's where money is divvied up through Sport Australia or Sport Integrity Australia, the old Sports Commission. That's where how the money is divided up in regard to developing ongoing success in that sport. So where they potentially had opportunities without fiddling and tinkering with things to stand on the podium, they've actually shot themselves in the foot financially as well in going forward, because they're not going to get the money allocated to them that's allocated as a result of how many medals you finish an Olympics with. So all round, I think they've pulled the wrong reins. And as I said, it's going to be quite a review that will be undertaken by Rowing Australia.
Great. Glenn Mitchell is with us, looking at the first week or so of the Olympic Games in Paris for 2024 for Dashing Down to Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans. Time's on the wing a little bit, Glenn, but just a few things. Katie Ledecky, definitely one of the all-time greats for Olympic Games, and she's won the 800 metres at each of those 4 and doesn't look like slowing up anytime soon.
No, and she equals the great Larissa Latinina. She's now the most successful female athlete in Olympic history with 9 gold medals. It is hard to get your head around winning 4 consecutive 800-metre freestyle gold medals. I mean, that is a truly remarkable performance. I mean, I think in our lifetimes, that'll never get beaten. It's one of those things that may get equal, but you're never going to see someone ever win an individual event at the Olympic Games in a swimming pool 5 consecutive times. I mean, you look at track and field, Al Urt, the discus thrower, did it. Carl Lewis did it in the long jump. But yeah, we lauded, and quite rightly so, the incredible performance of Dawn Fraser winning the 100 metres freestyle at 3 Olympics in a row. As I mentioned before, Christina Egazeki won 3 consecutive 100-metre backstroke titles. To win 4, truly amazing. And, she sits now in the pantheon of true Olympic greatness. When you look at it, Dan, I mean, the 1,500 metres she won the other night, she owns the fastest 20 times in the history of the women's 1,500-metre freestyle. she is an absolutely freakish athlete.
There's no doubt about that. Now, talking of an excellent athlete, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price pulled out. Some thought in controversial circumstances, ended up being a hamstring. You can't have an Olympic Games without some sort of controversy, Glenn. So she didn't run in the 100 metres on the track. And St. Lucia won an Olympic gold medal. Congratulations to them, Julianne Elfred. So a great story again, despite it being shrouded in a little bit of controversy.
Yeah, Sha'Carri Richardson was the favourite there, no doubt about that. But well done to the tiny island of St. Lucia. The Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price thing I find fascinating. They've come out and said that she withdrew through injury from the semi-final, where she would have been going head-to-head with Richardson. But there is the vision that's emerged of her arriving, trying to get into the training venue and being denied access because being told that she didn't arrive in a team bus, she arrived in a private vehicle. Now, will she run the 4x100 metres? Because she is a key member of that particular event. She's a great, she won the 100 metres in Beijing and London. She's an 8-time Olympic medalist, a 5-time world champion. But yeah, I wonder whether we'll actually ever get the full story here, because when you look at that video that's now doing the rounds, it appears that she was denied access into the venue, the warm-up venue. So I don't know when she actually suffered the hamstring injury. So I will await with interest later in this meet to see whether she actually runs the 4x100 metre relay.
And talking of controversy, is it a storm in a teacup, or is it a serious issue? And is it going to get more serious? Not only this individual case, but just this situation in general with the Algerian boxer Inani Khalif being allowed to box at the Olympics despite having a different chromosome makeup than most women. And we had Angela Carini in tears when she was obviously hit a couple of times in her bout against Khalif, and she pulled out of the bout saying it was too hard, but she's been allowed to box by the International Olympic Committee, even though at the World Championships, the International Boxing Federation said that this athlete, Khalif, and also another athlete, Lin Yu Ting, with a similar chromosome situation, couldn't box.
Well, Khalif now is guaranteed a medal. She's into the semi-finals, and we know that losing semi-finalists each get a bronze medal, so she's guaranteed a medal in her weight division. I think it is a massive shame that this has become such a big story. I shouldn't say shame. I think it's incredibly unfortunate that this is becoming now probably the largest story at the Olympic Games. You know, we've talked about Ledecky from an Australian point of view. We've talked about, McEwen going double back to back. So much of the media and social media is being taken up with this particular situation. On the one hand, you've got the IBA, the International Boxing Association, coming out and, with the IOC, and they're saying, especially Thomas Barker's come out and said there was no doubt that either of these two from Algeria and Taiwan, that they are definitely women and should be competing in women's competition. And then you get this bizarre circumstance where the International Federation is given offered $100,000 to Carini, of which she'll get $50,000. A quarter of it, 25 goes to her trainer, and 25 goes to the Italian Boxing Federation. Now, why do you do that? I mean, they're virtually saying, look, oh, yeah, we're sorry, you're a bit unlucky there, that there's a bit of controversy. So what happens if she wins her semi-final bout? Do they offer $100,000 to the woman who then wins the bronze medal? And if she goes on and wins the gold medal, does the federation give $100,000 to the woman who wins the silver medal? It seems like this half-pregnant type thing. If she is purely and simply an athlete that should be competing in women's boxing, then you rule a line through it. And why do you give monetary compensation to people that lose when they fight against her? So at the moment, I think even the peak bodies, the IOC and the IBA, are sort of, I don't know whether they feel guilt-ridden or whether they're trying to hedge their bets or whether they're trying to keep all parties happy. The interesting thing is that, now, I don't know whether this is because of payments or whatever, but, Carini has come out since and has spoken to the media and said that she wishes to apologise. if she saw her Algerian opponent again, she'd like to give her a hug. Now, that is very different from what she said when she got out of the ring. Now, I know that, any athlete, competitor after competition can say things that they will retract later. But, how much of that has been predicated on the fact that she's now getting a monetary compensation from her world peak body. The whole thing is a mess. But as I said, the unfortunate thing is that this is capturing so much of the conversation. So we're not really celebrating as much the athletes, like the Ledeckis. I'm sure they're getting their own plaudits, but so much of it, you're still picking up newspapers and going online. And the lead story in regard to the Olympics is what is happening in regard to gender identification in boxing, which I think is it's a great shame for all the other athletes that are there. Where it all ends, Dan, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of members of the media who are always looking for the negative story, Glenn. But just on that, I mean, one more comment from me. Carini actually said it's not fair, it's not fair. And they said it's not fair in regard to the athlete being a little bit too strong for you. She said, no, she changed her narrative straight away. My Olympic campaign is over. Maybe she already knew that she was going to be looked after financially. Now, I want to quickly talk to you about the Australian teams. The men's hockey, I reckon, underwhelming. They play Netherlands in the quarters. They got belted by Belgium 6-2. Very poor against India, losing 3-2, which has seen them finish third in their pool. But a bit like a touch of deja vu, Glenn, Tokyo, the Hockey Roos finished on top, undefeated. They scored 2 goals in the last few minutes to get that draw against Argentina, and they take on China. They lost to India, of course, in the quarters and missed out in the semis, but they're in good shape. But to me, the Kookaburras not going as well.
No, and the Kookaburras, when you get to a knockout stage at any men's Olympic hockey tournament, World Cup Champions Trophy, the team you probably don't want to play are the Dutch. And the Dutch are renowned for their corner battery, the penalty corner battery that they have.
Yes.
If you give away anything inside your defensive circle, you are likely to heavily pay for it. So the Kookaburras probably, were in the mix for gold and silver. They may actually not medal at all now. The women's hockey, I know Katrina Power very well, a dual Olympic gold medalist in the Rick Charlesworth era in Atlanta and Sydney. She's an incredibly studious person in regard to the sport. She has a great coaching background. She was the head coach through the New South Wales Institute of Sport for many, many years. She then had an assistant role with the Australian women's team. She's now the head coach and was put in there after the controversial removal of Paul Gadoin in the shadows of the Tokyo Olympics. They are looking very, very good. They're sneaking under the radar. I think they will account for China. They'll still have some tough opponents to come when they get to the really pointy end of the tournament. But no, they've certainly outshone the Kookaburras. And anyone that was involved or is involved in hockey would have told you that they would have been thinking the reverse going to Paris, that it would have been the men that would be putting up the greater show, but the women undefeated. They had the draw and had to come from behind. They did very well to close that game out very late. But no, they're looking the goods. They really are.
And I spoke to Steph Kershaw and also Tom Craig from the Kookaburras, Steph Kershaw from the Hockey Roos, for dashing down to Olympic adventures for Aussie Home Loans, Glenn. And of course, the Rosie Malone situation, that she wasn't selected despite being one of the players of the year for international hockey last year, and they'd put that behind them, and she remained quietly confident. So they're going really well. The Opals, terrible start, but I found a bit of form in that first game. They just could not handle the ball. And the Boomers, as Chris Anstey told me on our program as well, it's been a tough draw for them. Probably not quite ready with this group of players. So they've found it extremely difficult, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, both of them have had patchy campaigns, the Opals and the Boomers. I mean, in the end, they had their last victory against Greece. At one stage, it looked like their tournament was going to end on that result against Greece, because they were down by 18 points at one stage, and any margin like that would have seen them eliminated regardless of what Canada did against Spain in the subsequent game. But Canada was able to win that, and they had to allow the Boomers then to get through to the next stage. But yeah, I can't see the Boomers winning a medal, and the Opals likewise. I mean, they were horrid against Nigeria. It was about the only word. And Lauren Jackson, who's at her 5th Olympics and has played so many times for the Opals, said it was the worst performance that she'd ever been involved in with an Australian women's basketball team. So they finished second in their group behind Canada. I mean, they may win a medal, but I think both these teams, the men's and the women's, we have, with no disrespect, we have seen better squads go to an Olympic Games for Australia in both men's and women's basketball. I don't think the men are going to get on the podium. The women are still a chance, I think.
It was I thought, a risky move, a brave move to have Lauren Jackson there. Just watching her play, she's not playing a lot of minutes. Look, she's 43, so you can understand that's probably gone past her international basketball, certainly at the Olympic level, hasn't it?
Well, it has, but I mean, the same with any selection in any team. How do you make yourself stronger if you leave someone out? And I don't know. I'm not a great aficionado or follower of women's basketball, but I wonder whether there is anyone else that could have been selected that would be better than a 43-year-old Lauren Jackson. So whilst we don't expect to see her the heroics of when she was an MVP in the WNBA and things like that, I don't know whether there is anyone that could have played in her place that would have actually made a more positive effect or outcome. So I think they probably did I think they did do the right thing by selecting Jackson. And I just think her presence on the court as well must mean a hell of a lot.
And two more for me for Aussie Home Loans. Great to have Glenn Mitchell with us, looking at the first week of the Olympic Games. Still a lot to play out. The Stingers and the Sharks in the water polo. The men are going all right. There was an interesting picture that went around on Facebook, Glenn, of some of the men leaving the pool with scratches on their back and scratches sort of near their legs, lower part of their legs, etc. It's a brutal sport, as we know, but they're going really well. And the girls are flying. They were brilliant in that penalty shootout against the Dutch. It could be a little bit of 2000 with the Australian women's team in water polo, couldn't there?
Well, it could. I mean, both of them, as you said, are in terrific form. I mean, some of the play from the Sharks, the men's team's been incredible. I mean, that 8-3 win they had against Serbia. Admittedly, Serbia didn't medal at the last FINA World Championships, but they are the dual defending champion from Rio and Tokyo, the Serbs, and to lose, for Serbia to lose, for Australia to win 8-3 was an incredible result. And then we saw Nathan Power, with 46 seconds to go, get the winning goal against Hungary. They won 9-8. Now, Hungary is a very, very strong and proud heritage in regard to the sport of water polo. So, you know, they lost their opener 9-5 against Spain, but after that, they really got on a roll. And, you know, they're looking incredibly strong and for a first ever podium finish. And the women, they have been great. I mean, they finish on top of their pool. Their depth in their squad is outstanding. I think they are definitely bound for the podium and could well finish on the top deck. And, you know, we go back to Sydney. It was the first time that, you know, everything just fell into place. It was a gold medal in home water, on home soil, in the first time that event had ever been staged, a women's water polo competition at the Olympics. So, yeah, I reckon the women could well do it. And it's a matter now of what we do in the second week. Australia has 12 gold medals at the moment. We won 17 last start in Tokyo and 17 in Athens. It's a matter now. We may win the 4x100 metre women's medley tonight, and I think that is a 50-50 type result there. So that could get them to 13 medals. We need to find another 5 gold medals in the back half of the Olympic Games to post our best ever performance, and that will take some doing.
Well, I mean, you'd think the sailing, they've got a great record. They've won 12 gold medals in the last 4 Olympic Games, and I was lucky enough to call 3 of them in London in 2012. So we know what their record's like in sailing in recent campaigns. The track cycling, you'd give them a good chance there, wouldn't you, Glenn? You know track cycling better than most. And obviously, as Stephen Hooker's calling it, the field and track, or the track and field, there's some big events coming up there as well. We are a chance of going past 17, aren't we?
Oh, we are a chance, but again, everything's got to fall into place. Matthew Wern, the defending champion, the dinghy in the sailing from Tokyo, is leading the points at the moment. So he has a very strong chance to win gold. We've also got Jack Robinson into the semi-finals of the surfing.
Yep. So
in Tahiti. So he is a prospect to win a gold medal. On the velodrome, Australia isn't favoured or favourite to win a gold medal in any event, but they are in the mix. So if you look at the women's Madison, the men's sprint is probably a chance as well. And also by dint of that, the men's team sprint. So Matthew Richardson is a chance in the sprint and also in the Kieran and the women's Madison. But I would not be surprised if Australia left the velodrome without any gold medals. Then they're not really necessarily guaranteed to win. Nina Kennedy is our best chance, I would say, in track and field. She shared the gold medal last year at the World Championships in the pole vault. She finished tied with Katie Moon, and they had a discussion and they decided they'd both share the gold medal. Mackenzie Little is also an opportunity, I would think, in the javelin. She won a bronze at the World Championships last year. The other one that I think is going to be really interesting is Nicola Olaslagas in the high jump. Yes. She won the silver medal last time around in Tokyo. She's been in very good form. So there are some genuine prospects. Jessica Hull, fifth fastest all time in the 1500 metres. So she's a prospect as well. And then Matt Denny had an outstanding Diamond League last year in the men's discus. Finished fourth, I think, at the last Olympic Games. But he's a chance as well. And then if you look at some of the other prospects, as I said, maybe the women's hockey, potentially the women's water polo. Yes. But I think Australia would really need to win tonight, the women's medley. And if they do, there's a prospect that they could actually, for only the second time in history, following Melbourne in 1956, actually win the swimming. They go in one gold medal ahead of the United States, although the New York Times, the New York Post, the LA Times, NBC, CBS, ABC in America, they're all going to say that don't worry about gold medals, kids. We'll do something that no other nation on the face of the planet does, and we'll put aggregate medals first.
Which is what they've been doing. Yeah.
At the moment, Australia has 7 gold, America 6. So if Australia wins the women's medley and moves to 8 medals, they're 2 clear of America. So it could be a tie, or it could be America would need to win 3 on the last day if Australia wins 1. So a lot to look forward to in the swimming pool, and a lot to look forward to full stop over the next 7 or 8 days.
As you know, Glenn, in America, there's only one thing that matters. It's America. And if you know who gets in, there's only one thing that will matter for the next 4 years. It's America, America, and more America. Great to catch up. Love to chat to you when the event is over next week. Really appreciate your time as usual. Glenn Mitchell's been my guest looking at the first week of the Olympic Games, which has been a great week for Australia, a great week in general, full of controversy as usual, but it wouldn't be an Olympic Games without some form of controversy. And we're here for Aussie Home Loans. We thank Ben and Matt for jumping on board, getting behind us. They deal with anyone in Australia. They've got clients in every state and capital city. They do Zoom as well, as Glenn and I have done. And their areas of expertise include purchasing a property, building a property portfolio, refinancing, debt consolidation, cash out construction, pre-approvals, first home buyers, equipment loans, car loans, personal loans. And they've got over 25 lenders on their panel. Glenn, look forward to catching up after the games. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of it.
But Jan, I'm going to go and see your sponsor, because with a 19-year-old son who doesn't want to get a part-time job, I might have to go to Aussie Home Loans and see if I can get some sort of financial backing.
Well, Matt and Ben will look after you, Glenn. They're great fellas. Matt in particular. I know you don't drink, but you can have a coffee or you can have a soft drink, and he can have 100 beers. He's a great fella.
Good on you, Dan. Talk to you next week.
Thank you, Glenn. Look forward to it.